Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, awesome.
All good here?
Thank you. Um, so welcome. Thank you for joining us for our post-award webinar. I am just going to, there we go. So just so everyone knows, this webinar will be recorded and we'll distribute it to everyone following our presentation this morning. This should be a relatively quick formal presentation, and we have a relatively small group. So if you've got questions as things come up, please feel free to just jump in and ask them. I feel like that ensures that everyone has a full understanding of the program requirements if we're able to do those along the way. So I am going to dive right in. It'll let me. Okay. So just a quick agenda on the screen. We're going to talk about the program, the grant agreement and its components. You all received an email with many attachments on it. We will walk you through which of those need to be returned to us, which have to be signed, which have to be notarized. And then we'll talk through the requirements of the program. So for those of you who haven't been able to join us for a webinar before, we just always like to put this slide up on the screen. It gives you a better idea of what Capitalized Albany does and what we can offer. We are the city's economic development agency. We do have a couple of organizations that we administer for the city that help provide tax abatements for larger property development projects. So just keep in mind that if you are engaging in maybe $1 million plus redevelopment or development projects, give us a call. We might be able to assist you with some other supports as you move through that investment. We also serve as the local coordinator for New York State Consolidated Funding application. This is the big annual state grants push. Usually is announced April or May-ish, with applications due at the end of July. There are great grant and tax credit opportunities through that. So if you're looking at some kind of project that could benefit from that kind of funding, just give us a call and we can talk you through that. There's also other local partners and agencies that offer grant assistance, such as National Grid, if you're engaging in a redevelopment project of a vacant property and things like that. So just reach out to us and we can let you know all of the supports that might be available. The other thing we always like to say to folks is that if you ever run into any issues where you're trying to, figure something out for your business or for construction or what have you, please reach out to us if you don't know where to go. We may not be the ones with the answer. We may not be your last stop, but we have great relationships throughout the community and with all of our different federal, state, and local partners. So we'll be able to direct you to the right place. Okay, so diving into the facade improvement program and the grant agreement and its requirements. So this is our timeline. Those of you who have joined us for grant webinars or even for the application webinar, you've seen this timeline before, but what it has now is dates included. So what we did was we put up the required milestone dates for moving through your project and being able to complete it and get it reimbursed. The first thing I'll mention is that you may have noticed we were able to backdate awards to February 29th. So we sent out award notifications on March 27th, but we backdated the award to February 29th. This is pretty critical because, as hopefully everyone knows, we cannot reimburse for pre-award expenditures. So if you did start your project before you were notified of your award, but you started February 29th or later, those expenses that you incurred may still be eligible for reimbursement. So in your notification of your award, there was a date by which grant agreements, which includes all of the required exhibits and documentation, must be executed and returned to us by May 17th. From the execution of the grant agreement, you have 6 months to begin your project. So what we did was put up the milestone for the date by which you must begin your project. Begin your project can mean a lot of things. So if you have questions about that, just reach out to us. But the latest date by which you can begin your project is September 27th. Then from that point, you have a year to complete your project. So that milestone date is September 27th of 2025. And then from time of project completion, you have 6 months to submit your reimbursement request, which is April 27th of 2026. Once you complete your project and you submit your documentation, we will review it for reimbursement, and then we are able to issue a check for the eligible expenses that you incurred pursuant to your award. So overview of the grant agreement. The grant agreement is the legal contract between Capitalize Albany and the grantee and outlines the obligations and responsibilities of both parties. Please note that the grant agreement will not be considered complete and cannot be fully executed unless we have all of the required documents, which again, we are going to walk through them and let you know what exactly you need to get back to us and how it has to get back to us. The other thing I like to say is that that all of the documents referenced in the grant agreement, incorporated by exhibits and things like that, those are all of the things that govern the grant agreement. So that includes the program guidelines, it includes your application, and it also includes the Exhibit C, which is your project scope of work. At this point, I'm going to take it over to Cassidy, and she is going to jump in and give you some of the steps, the details, and walk you through the exhibits.
Thanks, Renee. So executing the grant agreement is going to be the first step in the post-award process. To execute, you'll need to return a signed and notarized grant agreement to Capitalize Albany, along with completed exhibits C through E and your certificate of insurance. Notary services are generally available at most financial or legal institutions, such as your bank or any place where you can find an attorney willing to notarize it for you. This must be submitted no later than May 17th, 2024. Our preference is to receive these documents electronically. If that's difficult for you, if you have trouble scanning them, we can accept a photograph as well. We can also accept hard copies, though please know in advance that we do not retain our paper records. Once the grant agreement is executed on our end, we'll send you a signed and executed copy for your files. The grant agreement includes 8 exhibits. We'll go through these today. We'll review the exhibits required to execute your grant agreement, and finally, we'll talk about exhibits required through the reimbursement process, so exhibits G and H. As we go through, we'll talk about what needs to be signed and returned to Capitalize Albany. For example, you will not need to return a copy of your application to us. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about exhibits A through C. So exhibit A, that's going to be your application, as we mentioned. Exhibit B, those are going to be the program guidelines. So these outline the requirements and processes of the facade improvement program, and these do not need to be returned to us. Next, we'll talk a little bit about Exhibit C. This is going to be your project scope of work, and this outlines the awarded project, the required project milestones, and the approved project budget. You'll have the opportunity to review and determine which elements of the project Capitalize Albany has awarded and discuss with staff. As a reminder, these deadlines are as follows. Your grant agreement execution is going to be May 17th, 2024. The start of your project will be September 27th, 2024. Project completion will be September 25th, 2025. And your reimbursement request and final report are due on April 27th, 2026. Any changes must be approved by Capitalize Albany through a written request. This can be an email.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick and say that, your grant award was based on the project you described in your application. That being said, we know that sometimes things change as you move through a project. Sometimes the price of something skyrockets, or you discover an issue that needs to be addressed that you weren't anticipating. So if you are going to make a change, or you need to make a change, just give us a call so we can talk you through it, because while you will have to submit a request in writing, we just want to make sure that you know what you're requesting, that we understand what you're requesting, and that you send us, what it is we need to constitute that written request for us to be able to make a determination whether we can approve or deny it. We also want to make sure that you're maximizing your award amount. So, if it seems like you're going to have extra money left over, or something you thought was eligible turns out to be ineligible, just give us a call and we'll work with you through how you might be able to utilize the full award amount. At this point, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions, because no one's jumped in quite yet. Okay.
Nice. We can jump right back into the exhibits then. So Exhibit D, this is going to be the non-collusive agreement, and this will be signed and notarized and returned to Capitalize Albany along with your notarized grant agreement. In Exhibit D, you'll certify that the work to be done and prices agreed upon have been or will be arrived at independently and without collusion, that all vendors and contractors selected had equal access to relevant information, and that the process was free of all improper bidding practices. Next, we have Exhibit E. This is going to be your media release form. This will need to be signed and witnessed, though it does not have to be notarized. And what this does is it explicitly allows Capitalize Albany and the City of Albany to use any photos or videos taken of their project. And it's primarily for promotional purposes, helps us to get the word out about our programs, and it helps us report back to our board to keep our programs funded.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in to apologize and say that your grant agreement instructions, one of the attachments on the email, are actually incorrect. You can see the image of the certificate of liability insurance. In the instructions, we have the incorrect parties to be named as additional insurance certificate holders. So what we're going to do is we're going to send out a fresh copy of the grant agreement instructions with the appropriately identified parties, and that will come with the copy of this webinar via email. To give you the overview, the certificate of liability insurance should identify Capitalize Albany Corporation and Albany Community Development Agency as certificate holders, and it should list as additional insured Capitalize Albany, Albany Community Development Agency, and the Capital Resource Corporation. Capitalize Albany administers the program, so that's why the has to be added as additional insured, and Albany Community Development Agency, or ACDA, and the Capital Resource Corporation are both funders of the program, so they also have to be listed as additional insured. The requirements are correctly identified on page 8 of your grant agreement in paragraph 19. What we've typically recommended to folks is just copy and paste that language into an email to your insurance agent, and they're usually able to take care of that piece of things very quickly. But if you run into any problems, just give us a call.
Renee. Next, we can discuss Exhibit F a little bit. So Exhibit F is your project sign specifications, and this just generally outlines that you'll be provided with capitalized Albany signage for your window. And we're very excited to share that we have obtained some new window decals with our capitalized Albany grant logo. So you'll be receiving one of those in the mail in the coming months. Keep an eye out for it. And then as a reminder, once you've executed your grant agreement before beginning your project and no later than May 17th, 2024, you'll begin your project no later than September 27th, 2024, and you'll complete your project no later than September 27th, 2025.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick and ask one more time, now that we've been through the grant agreement and what's required to be returned to us, notarized, witnessed, does anyone have any questions at this point?
I have one quick one.
Good so far.
Okay.
What kind of proof do you need for the project being started? We're hoping to have building permits pulled, a general contractor assigned and picked. Is there a threshold of certain amount of work that has to be done, like shovels in the ground, or?
No, it's not specific. What we ask everyone to do is keep us posted on the status of your project. If you've got a contractor on the line, things like that, it's always helpful for us to know where everything is in the whole process. We don't ask for specific proof. And if you're not going to meet the timeline, for any number of reasons, can't get a contractor or a vendor, or if you have a very giant project that everyone's very excited about, you know, those take a little while longer to get started. Just give us a heads up so that we can maintain your file and our records, so that, you know, if we go to look at the reimbursement request and let's say that you don't actually pay that vendor until, I don't know, let's say just beyond the September 27th, 2025 deadline or something like that, then we won't have to inquire as to why it seems like the project was not completed by the deadline. Does that make sense? Kara, you've got like a totally different, bigger, ginormous project that we're really excited to be a part of. We understand that there are certain components of it that may not be started by September 27th this year.
Yeah, we're getting ready to go out to bid for the whole phase that includes the portion you guys are funding. So we're hoping we'll have permits and contractors and whatnot, but it'll most likely be the spring when that door gets put in. Although today they are getting ready to do the ramp. So small things happening. Thank you. That's a really helpful answer. I appreciate that.
And I would say, honestly, going out to bid would constitute starting your project. So if you've got questions on that, let us know. Anyone else with questions at this point?
Renee, real quick, when you say what you've said get in touch with you guys a little bit, what's the preferred method? Like, should we email the development email that we received from Capitalize Albany, like that email address?
That email address is best because there are multiple people monitoring that inbox. But really, we've had people get in touch with us in a myriad of ways, and you know, as long as we know that you're trying to get in touch with us, you'll get someone. Our phone number and email will be on the last slide. I think most of you have our contact information. But you know, we're also at 21 Lodge Street, right across from the Hilton. So feel free to just walk in. Other questions? Okay. I will let Cassidy start talking us through the reimbursement request process, including the project completion report.
Nice. So review of your project completion documents required for reimbursement. We'll start with that. You'll submit the reimbursement request once the project is complete and no later than April 27th, 2026. As part of the reimbursement request, you'll be submitting Exhibit G. This is your project completion report. Exhibit H. This is two parts. The first part is your reimbursement request cover sheet. And then the second part of Exhibit H is your reimbursement request form. And this is the Excel file that we sent as an attachment. We also will need all supplemental materials submitted. So for the project completion report, this includes photos of the completed project, your W-9, and a certificate of occupancy if required. No grant funds can be dispersed until these documents have been submitted and approved by Capitalize Albany. Exhibit G is your project completion report. This is used to track the success and efficacy of our programs, and this allows us to solicit more funding for future grant programs. Thoughtful and thorough answers are very much appreciated. The above examples are based on project completion reports we've received in the past, and we always love to see, numbers or statistical metrics included in those. In Exhibit G, you'll submit a final project budget. So grantees must show their 50% match on this budget. We'll also track leverage. So please demonstrate the total cost of your project to the best of your abilities. Even if we might be providing funding for only a discrete phase of the project, feel free to include a line item that also mentions other expenses associated with the overall project. This is going to help us solicit more funding for our grant programs in the future.
Okay, so we're trying something a little bit different on this go around of the post-award webinar. I'm going to demonstrate how the budget table works because it does auto-calculate some things for you. So if it goes haywire, I apologize. So here you'll put, painting. And then let's say that you're requesting $6,000 from Capitalized Albany for it, but it actually costs $10,000. So you'll put the $4,000 in owner equity, and it auto sums everything. Tabbing, for those of you who are like me and avoid your mouse at all costs, it should proceed through the spreadsheet correctly. One of the things I want to note is that, the reimbursement maximum, if you were awarded the maximum of $10,000, like there's nothing in this form that will prevent you from saying in your Capitalized Albany grant request that you're looking for $11,000. Let's say your windows cost you $5,000 and another $5,000. So, you will see the $11,000 there. Just keep in mind your award maximum. It is also important to note that we made this page a fillable, or all of these pages a fillable PDFs so that it's easier to move through them. But it does have to be signed if you have like an Adobe signature, like a verified one, that's fine. Or otherwise it needs to be a wet signature because you are certifying to the fact that you spent all of this money, including your demonstrated minimum matching requirement. And because we don't require the supplemental documentation of those other expenses, we require the wet signature or the Adobe signature. Back to Cassidy for overview of the form and the other documents required, and then I'll demonstrate the actual reimbursement request form.
Yes, so that's going to be Exhibit H. Your reimbursement request form is used to show all invoices and receipts for which reimbursement is being requested. You don't need to include items being used as part of your match. So in Exhibit H, the submission must include your receipts and invoices as well as proof of payment for all line items and documentation of any licenses, permits, city approvals, anything like that that you needed for the project. Eligible invoices and receipts should clearly indicate the nature of the expense. That means showing the invoice date, the scope of work, your items purchased, the vendor name, and total cost. A few examples can be seen on the right of this slide. Proof of payment is required to back up these invoices and receipts. These can be canceled checks, certified checks, credit card statements, bank statements showing the withdrawal. If you paid for something online and it shows a credit card payment, that is totally sufficient proof of payment. Compliance is critical to the success and operation of these programs. So for our compliance purposes, you should not pay for items in cash because it is very difficult to establish proof of payment for those items. If you do run into any issues with these, please call us to discuss. Feel free to reach out about anything like this. And now I think Renee will run through some other requirements.
So can everyone see the Excel spreadsheet? Okay. So just to walk everyone through real quick, the reimbursement request form. The first thing you're going to put in is the business or organization legal name. This should be the name of the entity identified on your grant agreement. Then the contact person filling out this form, which I imagine for many projects is going to be the contact person identified on the cover sheet for this form. But if for some reason it's not, please put the person who's filling out the form who would have the answers to any questions we might have as we're processing your reimbursement. And then here you can put in the requested amount for the reimbursement. So on the left, invoice date or number, it's really an identifier for us as we're reconciling your form with your project budget table and the proofs of payment and their invoices. So whether it's a date or a number that's issued on that invoice, just something that identifies it. Then you'll put the date of your proof of payment documentation, the contractor or the vendor, a brief description of the work performed. Don't go crazy. If it's painting, just write painting. If it's awning, fabrication, installation, just you can put awning if that's easier. The date the work is performed. So just as a reminder, we cannot reimburse for pre-award costs that were incurred. So your invoice date or if it's an invoice date should be on or after February 29th. Your proof of payment date should be on or after February 29th, and the date the work was performed should be on or after February 29th. The invoice amount is the total amount listed on the invoice, whether it's entirely being requested for reimbursement for grant funds, or if you're only requesting half of whatever that invoice was, or maybe there's only one eligible item on that invoice. Doesn't matter. In the invoice amount column, just put the total. And then for the amount requested through the grant program, whatever it is that was eligible or you're requesting for, goes in the last column. And this spreadsheet should auto calculate as well. So if your invoice was 10, but you're requesting 4, your invoice was 25, and you're requesting 6, everything should function. So I will flip back to this screen now that we've gone through the reimbursement request form, project budget table, and other things associated with project completion. Does anyone have any questions about this part? Okay. So I'm just going to do a very brief run through of other requirements, a couple reminders and things like that. So the grant agreement and with the program guidelines and the application outline all of our obligations and responsibilities. You know, keep in mind, we'll be sending out the window decal for signage, the media release form, so that, like Cassidy said, we can promote the programs. We'll be able to promote the awesome small businesses and organizations we have throughout the city by sharing some of that information on social media, which also means that any actor pictures you send us, the better the picture is, the more likely it is that we will be able to share it. And sometimes we do like a Throwback Thursday type of thing. So those get plugged as frequently as we are able. Another thing to keep in mind with your project, it does have to be in compliance with relevant building codes and zoning. So know that if you do somehow manage to complete a project without having gotten those approvals, we wouldn't be able to reimburse until the improvements are brought to code or in compliance with zoning. And the other thing we like to ask folks is that if you are making any public announcements related to your project, so if you're a new business opening up or it's a new location and you're having a ribbon cutting or some kind of press conference, or if you're just sharing on social media highlighting your new sign or refurbished storefront, please tag Capitalize Albany in it, because it again helps us to promote the program so that everyone's aware that the programs exist, and to be able for us to be able to share it with our followers as well. And if you do end up in a situation where you're looking for some kind of ribbon cutting or press conference, and you don't really know where to start with getting that set up, we can always work with you to help facilitate and coordinate those.
Renee, I have a quick question. When you say comply with zoning, are we gonna be required to present to the planning board, or is this like depending on what we're doing?
It depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
I think you guys had a more interesting project, so I don't know if you've done that process with zoning or planning. Just make sure that everything meets their requirements so that we can see the project done, because that was we were very happy with our project this year. We're really excited for everyone. We got a lot of signage, which is great, but we want to make sure that we can see it done and that we can reimburse you for it.
Okay, and so same thing like with it looks like our building's in the historic district, so we would be responsible for researching that and figuring out if we need to present to the Historic Resource Commission.
Yes, and
Okay.
I think that you guys will have to. If you contact the planning office, they should be able to clear up any of those questions.
Okay.
If you need a contact for them, just let me know and I'll send you someone.
I will. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you all
I
so
have a
much.
question, Renee.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
absolutely. No, that's cool.
I know that this is a rolling grant. So once we have done A, B, C, D, E, F, G for whatever we need to do for this round, are we able to apply multiple times?
Yes. We do, I mean, quite frankly, in this round, we awarded second facade grants to some folks, or some people were leveraging some other pieces of their project with other grant funding that they've gotten. Some projects are just big. Sometimes your small business or your not-for-profit is evolving. So your needs may change by the next time an application is available. Do know that we can take into consideration, if you've been awarded before, it may impact whether or not you get an award or how much that award is moving forward. But absolutely, you are eligible to reapply in the next round. And
Thank you so much.
yeah, of course. That also applies to other programs we may have. So some of you folks are in one of our retail corridors. Sometimes we run a standalone program that you might be eligible for. So, keep an eye out for those. But it's all sort of the same evaluation process. Okay. If we've got nothing else, you know where to find us, hopefully. We'll send out the recording of the webinar with the fresh copy of the grant agreement instructions. And, you know, we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.